Today we're talking about 10 of our favorite open-world gangster games of all time. If it's anything closely connected to the mafia, gangster lifestyle, or organized crime stuff, we're talking about it today. It's kind of a broad category, and it's hard to narrow down to our favorites, but we're looking forward to hearing yours in the comments too. So let's get started off with number 10 and talk about The Getaway, probably one of the more unique and often forgotten
Actually
games
never
on our
played
list
that.
because it focuses on organized crime in like a hyper-realistic London, at least at the time for a PS2 game. This incredibly large
I remember it, but I
and
never played it.
faithfully recreated London dealt with all sorts of organized crime in London, from Soho to the Yardies. There was a lot going on here, and you played as someone thrust into it all after you finally got out. You're pulled back in because of your family. You get caught up in the world of the Kingpin, Charlie Jolson, and everything that goes on. It's just mean and gritty and nasty and bloody and really freaking cool. The game, you know, to compare like to movie fans, it's very much like a Guy Ritchie type of thing. It feels very much like a Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, a Snatch type of thing. And for good reason. It was really awesome, incredibly underrated, and it did have a lot of technical shortcomings and weird gameplay quirks. But still, the story, the world, and just the good, gritty London gangster thing was really, really special. Black Monday, the sequel, put you more into the criminal underworld, but that game was even more messy, so we're really focusing on just the original Getaway here, because we thought it was a gem. Now, next at number 9, a game that wasn't received as well, but we like it, is Driver, Parallel Lines. This was a little bit of a shift for the Driver series, because in this one you played as TK, not Tanner, the usual Driver guy. TK is a criminal getaway driver who gets wrapped up in organized crime in New York City in both the 70s and in modern times. It was actually really cool what the game did in terms of the story. It would shift between like 1978 to 2006, you know, two very, very different New Yorks. We're from New York. The city changes at a very rapid pace. And this game did a fairly decent job of showing that, but also giving you a lot of cool car chases and smashing cop cars and just doing crimes, especially with like a little bit of a cool, funky 70s vibe. It was definitely one of the more criminal-focused games of the Driver series, so that's why we're talking about it. That series, overall now in 2020, does not get enough love.
I did not
Driver
play
San
this.
Francisco is still worth pointing out too. But in terms of good old criminal gangsterness, Driver Parallel Lines is probably one of the better Driver games for that. It's a little rough, hasn't aged well, but we wanted to talk about it, damn it. We argued about it here. Now over at number 8, we have Scarface, The World Is Yours, which honestly,
I had that. That
before
was
this
rough,
came
boy.
out, we all remember sitting around talking about how bad it was probably going to be, and we were completely surprised because Scarface was an over-the-top, weird, quirky crime simulator game that was just a blast to play. Yes, the story essentially is Scarface, Tony Montana himself, actually surviving the incident at the end of the original Scarface film, which is ridiculous, but you essentially go on to kind of rebuild an empire, and it kind of devolves into you, Scarface, wielding rocket launchers, shooting them from cars, running around Miami, blowing stuff up, fighting cops. It was pretty big, it was pretty comprehensive, and honestly, it was just big, bombastic, dumb fun. You could go into Tony Montana rage mode, where he would just scream obscenities. You could be super powered. I still, to this day, can't believe this game was made. Really. I shit you not. Like, if you've never heard of it or anything about it, you should really
came out
look
like in
into
06.
it. Anyone that loves anything Scarface might like this if they don't take it too seriously, because it is truly something special. It is very much an odd point in video game history, but a ton of fun. Now, if we're talking about fun, movie-based crime gangster games, we have to talk about The Godfather. And, you know, for that matter, The Godfather 2. But the first one was really, really special. First of all, as someone who grew up with The Godfather, it was like almost
I was the second one I have.
we would watch it like once a
third
month. The Godfather did a pretty good job at like weaving its way into Francis Ford Coppola's, you know, excellent historical film based on the Mario Puzo novel. You create your own character that gets wrapped up in the Corleone crime family, and you rise up through the ranks, through different positions, all while facing off against other rival New York City gangs at the time. And there was some really good, you know, Godfather world building here. Not only that, it just really captured that vibe, you know, that gangster stuff of that time period, while also getting to see some fan favorites like, of course, Don Vito Corleone, Luca Brasi, Sonny Corleone, Tommy Hagen. It was really surprising just how fun it was too from a gameplay mechanic. You were very much tasked with not only, killing other gang members, running from police and chases and stuff, but also enforcing your mob rule and cracking down on shop owners and threatening them and making them pay up. It was really cool for that stuff, I'm not gonna lie. And then The Godfather 2 focused on, mostly the coastal move The Godfather Part 2 actually had, focuses way more on the management aspects. I didn't find it as much fun, but a lot of people really, really love it. Either way, whichever one you go with, they're just good old criminal gangster games. And there's not much better than The Godfather, you know what I mean? Now over at number 6, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about a different type of criminal empire and talk about the Yakuza series. Now, these games are awesome.
Oh, yeah, I had one of
having
those.
them for years because they do a really good job of balancing over-the-top crazy ridiculousness and cartoony brawler combat action in the streets with some melodramatic storytelling that rides a great line of not taking itself too seriously, but also being pretty important, focusing around Yakuza crime families in Japan. In a made-up city district of Kamurocho, and you play as Kazuma Kiru, who goes on a lot of adventures, and I mean a lot. These games are vast, and a lot of stuff goes down that we can't talk about here, but essentially, you're the most badass, dangerous man on the streets of Japan. Nobody can cross you. You're tough as nails. You can fight off other gang members just like that. I definitely recommend starting from the beginning with Yakuza 0 and seeing Kazuma's essential rise through the criminal ranks. The games just get better and better. They're all really special. We love them, and we take any opportunity to talk about them. Next up at number...
With the S.
You got nice color scheme. What color would you say that it?
Next up at number 5, we're going to mention Red Dead Redemption 2, believe it or not, because so much of the game revolves around being in a gang, learning what it's like to work with other people that are essentially running from something in their past life, and you form this merry band that is Dutch Vanderland's gang, and the adventures that ensue are pretty crazy. First of all, you get to see this gang a little bit past their heyday, but still very much a fully formed group. A mission had gone horribly, horribly wrong. People died, the feds are after you, things are dire, but as Arthur Morgan, you play as someone who essentially grew up in this gang. This life of crime and this life of being a rebel is pretty much all you know. Now, I will say, with Red Dead Redemption 2, the Vanderland gang, it doesn't come off initially as the most hardened band of criminals, just people trying to, scrape out a life in the Midwest, more so. But still, you do some very illegal shit in these games, and that is absolutely worth pointing out. As much as there are some good dudes in that gang, there are also some dastardly dudes. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Micah. Regardless, if we're talking about open world, gangster, criminal games,
Knocked his head off.
It's silly to not mention Red Dead Redemption 2 because it totally encompasses that. Now, down to number 4, we gotta give some love to Sleeping Dogs, the Hong Kong criminal.
Oh, I forgot about that.
game.
I still have
Yes,
that game.
I
I
know,
forgot all about
technically
that.
the main character is an undercover cop, but you're infiltrating the mob, and that is completely what the game is focused on.
I haven't played that game in a
for
long
good reason.
time.
The game is fun as hell. It's incredibly violent. It's action-packed, like an over-the-top movie. In a lot of ways, I think in terms of cinematic elements and action set pieces, it's up there with Grand Theft Auto and the likes. But that Hong Kong
Yeah, it was
Chinese
originally,
action cinema feel they add to this just makes
that's
it
supposed
that
to be
much
True
more
Crime
special.
3,
And
but they
although
changed
it
it.
is very much a game like many other games that are open world crime carjacking games, still years after, we highly recommend it, man. Now at number 3, we gotta talk about Saints Row. Maybe we're gonna stick a little bit to the original Saints Row. Saints Row
Now
2,
wait a minute now.
maybe sort of Saints Row the 3rd, because those are the games that really
Oh, no, Mafia 1, 2, or 3 on the list. This list stinks. I'm telling you now. Because I was waiting for it. I'm like, what the hell are they?
focus.
They need to be more than
on
honorable
illustrating
mentions if they're on
this
here.
Gang in this fictional city that wore purple. They were founded by Julius Little, and it just really served as
I like
really
Saints
cool
Row.
gang
Come on, now.
imagery, and you got to know a really colorful cast of characters throughout these games. Where the first game was straight up, for real, a Grand Theft Auto clone, taking advantage of the next console generation at the time. By the second game, and then really the third game, the Saints Row series really evolved into its own. And sure, now with later games, they've really kind of strayed away from the crime, family, gang stuff. The quirky gang elements that were in the earlier games were still really, really fun, from customizing cars to picking out how you would rock your colors, to fighting rival gangs in the streets. You know, all that stuff was a blast. And like I mentioned, like at first this really started out as a GTA clone. I'm glad it evolved past that because like it's really good that this series exists because even the newest games are just so over the top and really awesome that like I couldn't imagine an alternate universe video game world where we don't have Saints Row games. You know what I mean? But I digress. Let's move on. And of course, talk about the Grand Theft Auto series at number 2.
Wow.
They're all very specific and very different. For
This
me,
may
personally,
need to be a
if we're
top
talking
20
about, like,
list.
Criminal, gangster
Mafia not on the list?
I'm going to focus on Grand
None of
Theft
them?
Auto 3 for all of the Liberty City gang stuff. You get involved in a lot of mafia type stuff. To Vice City, which of course deals with a bunch of Colombian cocaine dealers, Haitian gangs, and you building up the Scarface empire. And of course, San Andreas, which deals with Grove Street and like real West Coast gang type of stuff in the early 90s. Also, too, if you want to talk about gangs, I guess The Lost and Damned as well. The Grand Theft Auto 4 expansion really focuses on that group dynamic. Really, you can interpret it, any Grand Theft Auto game has open world criminal gang empire elements. And at this point, like, Grand Theft Auto is probably our most talked about series on GameRanks. I don't know how much more there is to say about any of them, but imagine we just didn't talk about them. That would be really funny. Personally, we still think that that era of them, like Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, those games are still totally worth revisiting to this day for that open world gangster charm, you know? Now down to number 1. Of course, you knew we were going to talk about it. We weren't going to forget it. Come on, guys. Mafia 2. Now, we've talked about a lot of open world gangster
one of them
games,
got to be
but
on the
if we're
list.
narrowing it down to specifically the Mafia
2 of them should be on the list, really.
There's not as many games out there for this, but Mafia 2 is one of the best, and it's why we love it. Now, the original Mafia really paved ways and served as a very different alternative to the Grand Theft Auto stuff at the time, but Mafia 2 took the time to really tell a very interesting story and have some solid gameplay as well. And just really nailed the presentation from the vibe, the voice acting, the licensed music that was pretty damn incredible. And it's just really a great game all around and worth replaying, honestly. We did recently, and yeah, it's still good. It's not as completely open world, like do anything you want as, you know, something like a Saints Row or a Grand Theft Auto. They focus more on the story here, but in terms of like simulating you being a mafia guy rising through the ranks, you know, in a criminal empire, it's great for it. Mafia kind of changed directions with 3. I'm one of the few people that still enjoys it, but I can't deny Mafia 1 and 2 are still like
Mafia 3 is a
Mafia
classic.
2
Deal
is
with
really
it, man.
something
Deal with it.
If it wasn't on your radar before. Those are some games. Those are our picks, but of course we got some bonus ones for you because there's so many. First of all, the true crime games. We got to mention them because that has a lot of criminal activity.
True crime was good.
They're rough around the edges. They haven't aged well, but yeah. Also, we got to mention Mafia Wars. Do any of you remember that? Anybody else have MySpace? Also, Rockstar Games is The Warriors, which was based on the film from the 70s, focusing on New York City youth street gangs. It was a beat-em-up brawler, and it was really good and very, very faithful to the movie it was based on. You should probably watch that too. Also, Gangster's Organized Crime. This was the first one that eventually does sequel. It's a little less open world, but it's more of like a top-down planning, gangster simulator. And the same thing goes for Omerta, City of Gangsters, which is more of a strategy approach, but gives you a look and control of Atlantic City. Those were a lot of really fun games to talk about, but there are more out there, so we'd love to hear from you down in the comments. Like I said, some of your favorite open world gangstery, mafia, criminal games. Let us know, guys. Maybe you have the same games as us. Maybe your order's a little bit different. We don't take the order too seriously, but we'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments. However you write out your favorite games, we want to see. But of course, if you enjoyed this video, maybe learned about a new game or old game, clicking the like button is...
Yeah, to me, all the Mafia games should have on the list. The remake, even though the remake or the whatever you want to call it, that should have been on the list because it's only a couple of years old, but still, that's all of them are good. And then some people they still hate it, but some people realize Mafia 3 is not that bad. It never was that bad. Just the buggy stuff, okay, but it wasn't that bad. They just didn't like it mainly because it wasn't like 1 and 2. That's the main reason they didn't like it. But it's not that bad.